When the narcissist realizes you are done. You're not coming back. You've truly walked away. You're no longer invested. You're through with them. You're done for good. You're no longer playing their game. Because you realize they're not good for you. You recognize that their behavior is toxic, manipulative, and ultimately detrimental to your well-being. You acknowledge that they have been invalidating your feelings, fostering insecurity, and creating a cycle of dependence or self-doubt. You have become aware of their lack of empathy, constant need for validation, and exploitative tendencies, which have prevented you from being in a healthy, fulfilling relationship. You realize that their behavior stems from deep insecurities and a fragile sense of self-worth. They feel inadequate and powerless inside, which led them to seek admiration and control from you to prop up their ego. It resulted in manipulative behaviors, such as playing mind games, withholding affection, and emotionally exploiting you, to where they would siphon your peace, happiness, contentment, and energy, because they have none of their own. They drained you of your emotional resources so that they could feel temporarily fulfilled, because they suffer with bitterness and a sense of emptiness, which they attempted to fill through these manipulative dynamics. They depleted you emotionally to maintain their own sense of superiority and control, because they were experiencing a combination of deep-seated insecurities and unresolved emotional pain. On the surface, they may have projected confidence, superiority, and entitlement, but beneath this facade lies a fragile ego and an overwhelming sense of inadequacy. They have unresolved childhood wounds. They have experienced neglect, criticism, or emotional trauma in childhood, which led them to develop an inflated sense of self to shield themselves from feelings of worthlessness. Their bitterness comes from that unresolved pain of not receiving the validation or emotional nurturing they needed as children, to where they now struggle with an unstable sense of self-worth, and they rely on external validation from you to feel valuable. But even when they receive praise or admiration, it feels hollow and temporary. Their lack of internal validation led them to feelings of emptiness, and an inability to feel genuine connection, which left them feeling disconnected and reinforced their bitterness, because they were not able to experience the deep emotional bond that you have. They envied you for your genuine happiness, success, and connection. This envy mixed with their feelings of entitlement bred bitterness, as they believed that they deserved more than what they had, but they felt unable to achieve it in a fulfilling way. We all have childhood wounds, and the difference lies in how we respond to them. Many people experience neglect or trauma in their early years, but the key factors that differentiate us from narcissists are how we process these experiences, the choice we make in response, and our capacity for self-awareness and growth. You have the ability to recognize your wounds and reflect on them, which allows you to heal and grow. This introspection helps you to understand your emotions without letting them define or control your behavior. Narcissists, on the other hand, lack this level of self-awareness and instead build defenses to deny or deflect their emotional pain. Despite your own struggles, you retain the ability to emphasize with other people, while narcissists have a limited capacity for empathy. And you also take responsibility for your own emotional well-being and choose to focus on spreading love and positivity, even when life has been tough. While narcissists avoid responsibility for their behavior and blame other people for their dissatisfaction, they project their bitterness outwards, rather than using it as an opportunity for personal growth. And while you may feel bitterness at times, your drive is to connect with others and build meaningful connections. But narcissists tend to see relationships as transactional, where they will not even give a fraction of what they receive or control. They struggle with forming authentic, vulnerable connections, which leaves them empty and isolated. And this is probably the reason why you are done with them. It's why you just can't be around them anymore. Because it's affected your mental, emotional and physical well-being, and the harm that they've inflicted is deliberate. Even though it may be masked by charming or appealing traits, because they thrive on control, admiration and diminishing people, which can lead to an emotional and psychological breakdown of their victims. But now you have developed an awareness of their destructive nature, which is a critical first step in protecting well-being, because it has helped you to recognize that you need to walk away. It has helped you to recognize that you are dealing with someone who has a deep psychological condition. They have a disease of the mind that is weakening them and leading to self-destructive outcomes. Their constant need for validation and control is sabotaging their own well-being and the relationship. It has led them to a perpetuating cycle of emotional instability, to where they then began to feed off your energy, love and validation like an emotional parasite, until you then became emotionally malnourished, because you were provided with an imbalance of essential nutrients necessary for good health and growth. You were overgiven, and you were getting little back or nothing in return. You were being starved of love, attention, acceptance and acknowledgement, until you then began to feel exhausted and rejected. So it's no wonder that when you're starving, a breadcrumb can feel like a feast. Because you were left empty, starving, thirsty and depleted, which is why you may now feel as though there is little left of you. You may feel empty, hollow, with nothing left to give. And all of this time you may have found yourself saying, I can do it. I can manage. I can make it. When you knew in your head and in your heart that you're not and you can't, because you have been trapped in an unhealthy relationship. When you deserve to be in a relationship that is based on equality, reciprocity and mutuality. But do not blame yourself. It does not mean that you are bad or foolish. Narcissists are very skilled at manipulation. Their behaviour can make it hard for you to recognise the toxicity or even make the decision to leave. They often use gaslighting to make you doubt your own perception of reality, to confuse you and make you feel like you're overreacting or misunderstanding things. They may have even used tactics like threats, guilt tripping or fear of abandonment to make you feel like leaving them would lead to worse outcomes. So you may have been worrying about the consequences of leaving, like being isolated, rejected or even emotionally attacked. Or you may have experienced cognitive dissonance, where your mind holds conflicting thoughts. Because part of you wanted to believe that the narcissist could change, or that they have the potential for goodness, even when their behaviour was harmful. So this conflict may have delayed your decision to leave. Because even if you do try to leave, they make you feel like you're making the right decision by going back. They make you believe that they've changed, and that this time it's going to be amazing. So it makes you think that it's going to be easier to go back. But by doing that, you're just settling for less than what you deserve. You're settling for something that is only of moderate quality compared to what you put in and what you're worth. Because your life is worth far more than their nonsense. And that is why you gave so freely, because you had that much to give. But it's not sustaining you. It's not comforting, supporting, strengthening, assisting, or encouraging you. It's not providing what is needed to even cause you to exist or continue at the level that you were before meeting them. It's an unpleasant experience. It's something that you have to suffer and endure. Because they're disagreeable, unfriendly, inconsiderate, rude, impolite, obnoxious, malicious, mean-spirited. It's unbearable. It's not able to be endured or tolerated. It's an extreme quality so painful and unpleasant that you find it hard to accept. And going back to them is not going to make it any better. Because this is just how they live. Their behaviour is deeply ingrained and stems from their way of living and perceiving the world. They live in a cycle of manipulation, control and self-preservation. They lack self-awareness. And even if they do become self-aware, they won't have any desire to change. So you're not going to be able to make any sense of it, because it is so toxic. So it's really difficult to understand the true meaning behind it. But what you do need to understand is that they are deeply unhappy. They may even be experiencing depression. They have a deep insecurity and a fragile ego, which is why they have a need for control and power. And this is why there is an emotional disconnect, because they have a fear of vulnerability. They resist self-awareness, because it forces them to confront feelings of inadequacy and failure, which they are desperate to deny. Their inflated ego doesn't allow them to admit that they might be the problem, and this is never going to change. But when they realise you're not coming back, it is going to be very difficult for them, because there was a reason why they invested time into you. They needed your attention and focus. They didn't care about you as a person. They wanted what you could supply them, your love, understanding and compassion. They do not see relationships the way that we do. They're looking for you to give them something that they're not able to give to you. It's a one-sided transaction. They can only reciprocate to you for a short period of time, and it's designed only to bait you in. It's not authentically who they are, which is how they're unable to sustain it. And if they feel that they have lost you, they will try to get you back. But they will never change. They are stuck in a cycle of repeating the same behaviours, and it's all they know how to do. They can't do anything else. They can only pretend. They can only learn what they need to do to get you back. But it will always be transactional. It will never be about love, because they don't know how to love anyone. It will only be about what you can do for them. It will be about you making them feel good, but they won't make you feel good. And they won't want to lose you, because while they may have other people who give that to them, it's not going to be as good as how you give it to them. So they may make a very great effort to get you back, unless it ended in a sudden and striking way, because then they may hold off on hoovering you. They are highly sensitive of rejection. If they suspect you're likely to reject their attempts to reconnect, they may avoid hoovering to protect their ego. So if you dealt a severe blow to their ego, such as by exposing their manipulative behaviour, rejecting them decisively, or outsmarting their tactics, they may feel too humiliated to attempt re-engagement. Their ego may already be too damaged, to the extent that they can't face you again, because they perceive that you are completely beyond their influence. So they will see hoovering as futile, which damages their sense of power and motivation further, because they're not going to see any point in hoovering someone if they believe they're not going to accept their offer, or if they don't believe they're going to be satisfied with them reaching out to them. They would be just putting themselves in position to be humiliated, so they might just leave you alone. And you should leave them alone, because you can't heal them, and no narcissist is going to give you validation or closure. Narcissists cannot do that. They will struggle or outright refuse to provide that to you, because doing so threatens the integrity of their false self. It damages and harms the grandiose and idealized version of themselves, which they have constructed to shield their fragile true self. So if they were to give you closure or validation, they would be like a lamb to the slaughter. They would be giving you permission to annihilate them, and this is why they refuse to give that to you. It's why they refuse to behave quietly and obediently without resisting, and instead they always have to snap back at you, because the false self must remain unchallenged. The narcissist's false self was built on the belief that they are superior, blameless, and always in control. If they were to give you closure, it would require them acknowledging their role in the harm caused, which threatens this illusion. It forces them to confront their imperfections, a regality they avoid at all costs. Because validating you means validating your perspective, which in their mind diminishes their superiority and control. It exposes their vulnerabilities. It exposes their true self. And their true self is deeply insecure and filled with feelings of inadequacy. So this kind of exposure feels intolerable to a narcissist, which is why they will never give you closure or validation. And instead they will deflect responsibility or project blame onto you. This allows them to avoid accountability while protecting their image, while offering closure would mean taking a hard look at their behaviour, which is something they will instinctively avoid, because it risks shattering the illusions they created about themselves, so they will never tell you the truth. Because it threatens their sense of control, validation and superiority. It would cause them to lose your supply. And your supply is very important to them. So the fact that they are withholding truth, validation and closure from you really just reveals how powerful and significant you are to their sense of identity and emotional survival. Their entire identity and self-perception is built on how you perceive of them, which is why they have developed this carefully constructed facade to manipulate and deceive you. Because your attention, validation and emotional investment is very important to them. It fuels their fragile ego. While if they were to give you the truth or let you go with clarity, they would risk losing the supply they extract from you, which would otherwise make them feel important and validated. Their false self relies on being seen as superior, infallible and blameless. Giving you the truth, admitting wrongdoing or validating your experience would shatter this carefully maintained image. They cannot risk showing you their vulnerability or humanity because they equate it with weakness. Many of you mistake a lack of closure, validation or emotional investment as the narcissist's expressions of your inadequacy or insignificance, when in fact it signifies the opposite. It highlights your power. The fact that they go to such lengths to avoid giving you closure or validation does reveal how much power you hold. Because if you were insignificant to them, they wouldn't work so hard to maintain their facade or control their dynamic. Your ability to see the truth, demand accountability, or even move on threatens their carefully constructed regality. This is why they often resort to tactics like gaslighting, blame shifting, or stonewalling to regain control. Because they are dependent on your energy. They depend on you for validation and a sense of identity. By denying you closure and validation, they can keep drawing this energy from you. Whether it's through anger, sadness, or attempts to seek answers. Well, if they were to let you go with peace, they would have no further claim to your energy, which they cannot tolerate. The irony of the narcissist's refusal to give you closure or validation is that it actually emphasizes your importance. If they truly didn't care, they wouldn't invest energy in maintaining control over you. The lengths they go to avoid losing you as a source of supply are testament to the value they place in your attention and validation, even if they won't admit it. Ultimately, the narcissist's behaviour reflects their deep dependency on you, even as they try to make you feel insignificant. Recognizing this can help you to reclaim your power. Step out of their manipulative cycle and give yourself the closure and validation they'll never provide. Thank you for watching. If you found this video helpful, please give it a thumbs up. Share your thoughts in the comment section. Hit the subscribe button to receive the notifications. If you would like to support the channel, you can donate at paypal.me/narcsurvivor. You can book a one-on-one with me on my website. It's narcsurvivor.co.uk. Thank you for watching, and I'll talk to you soon.